Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Mo.
And I'm Angelos.
And we are very excited to be here with another deep dive into one part of the Your Success book, which, for anyone that doesn't know, is being released on Monday, the 24th of September, and is going to be on Amazon, as well as a load of other places. This deep dive podcast is going to be part of our mini-series.
Indeed. And today is all about learning, which is very, very important for anyone, really. Learning does not stop at school.
Yeah.
So we talk in some detail about learning and the importance of learning within the book. We look at the value of learning, the growth versus fixed mindset, and why that's important to have a good growth mindset. And also being able to learn from everywhere, but also be able to check whether that source is biased or not. I think especially in this day and age where everyone is reporting to spout the truth of fake news, you've got to be able to distill the truth.
That's easy for you to say.
From somewhere. So just making sure that things are not biased, and just making sure you've got a good source of everything. And also the importance of learning from failure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're either earning or you're learning.
That's it.
Very, very true words. So we go into a lot of detail within the book about that. So please don't forget to sign up to our exclusive launch offers for the book at tiny.cc/yourbook.
So, Angelos, why is learning so important, do you think? Is it? What do you mean by learning, firstly? Are you talking about learning like when you're at school, or learning as you get older and kind of go through your life?
I think there's two phases to learning, really. One of the first things you do in life, really, is go to school.
Yeah.
You know, you're always learning whether you're aware of it or not. And the second phase after school is what you choose to learn. So you have a curriculum imposed upon you, whether you like it or not, whether you want to learn English, French, maths, whatever it is. And then you can pick and choose what you want to learn or not learn at all.
Yeah.
But I don't think ignorance is a very good thing. And I think we should always strive to learn new things throughout our life. I mean, our brain is just there ready to soak up all this information. It's a real tragedy that we don't push ourselves and read more and learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was quite, you mentioned school there, it was quite fun. I'm just thinking about the section in the book where we talk about our earlier years, and actually neither of us were probably that focused at school.
No, we weren't. And I think for me it's just having so much energy.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't focus to sit down and read a book, but I had plenty of time for practical stuff. I built a little Batmobile go-kart for my GCSE woodwork project, which I was very proud of.
Have you still got it?
No, I left it at the school
Right.
because it was too big to take home.
It was framed, was it?
It was framed,
Fame.
yeah, hanging up. But what I find ironic is that at school, I couldn't wait to leave school. I thought my learning was done. You know, I knew it all, right? At the age of 16, like we all do. And then in my 20s, I really discovered the value of real learning. You know, not just formal education through uni, but what you're really interested in. I'll tell you a little side story, Mo. So when I used to work in the bank, I used to do the night shift, looking after the systems, whatever else. And I used to set myself a challenge to learn a new topic and become a master of that topic. Yeah. So whether it's the history of the Titanic or whether it's, you know, ants or whatever it was, I always set myself a target. Yeah, I love ants. They're brilliant, brilliant little insects. So yeah, it's always important to keep learning throughout all of your life. I mean, how do you see the distinction?
Yeah, very similar. I think I couldn't wait to get out of school and just stop learning out of a textbook. I wasn't bad at school, but I wasn't focused on it, and there was loads of other things I wanted to do. It's really interesting, the contrast now with, I do love learning if it's about personal development, if it's about business, entrepreneurship, mindset, things like that. I love it, and even to the extent, I know it's not learning, but even just the curiosity around like Googling things and looking them up on Wikipedia and other trusted sources. I love it now. And I think it's weird, that switch from it being imposed on you to actually you wanting to do it to better your life, I suppose, and better yourself.
Don't you find it amazing that we have literally the world's knowledge at our fingertips? On this little device here, we can search for anything we want. If we have any questions, we just chuck it at Google, and 9 times out of 10, we'll have an answer.
And I think that's really interesting. And I think the other thing is that how the world's going to change over the next few years in terms of information being a commodity, and it's very easy. You don't need to go to school to learn certain laws and things like that, because you can find loads of information like that online, and you can have systems to do maths algorithms and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting, are we heading to a place where actually being able to interact with other humans and having more emotional intelligence and stuff like that, is that going to be more valued in the future? Because a lot of things are going to be automated. There's going to be self-driving cars and all that kind of stuff.
And you've got the factor of AI creeping in already, and for good or for bad. We don't know. It's still way too early. There are some dire and some really hopeful predictions for what AI is going to tell us. But what's interesting is that I remember back when I was doing my exams, you weren't able to have, well, there were no phones.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, but we didn't have any data.
Were you allowed an abacus?
We tend to use sand. It was quite useful. But nowadays, you rely on Google for everything.
Yeah,
and I wonder whether our memories are being degraded because we don't have to remember it. We can just always turn to Google, and our reliance to online learning.
I think it's probably shifting. We're probably shifting what we use our brains for, right? But I think they're even like allowed. I don't know, but are they allowed calculators now in exams? I think some maths.
What's a calculator, mate?
It's like an abacus, but it's much quicker. I think they are actually allowed in some exams because it's not so much about being able to do the maths in your head, because that's not a skill that's going to really be needed that much anymore. It's more about knowing how to solve the problem and how to put the things together rather than...
And also being able to use Google and finding online sources. I mean, that's a critical skill as well.
Well, actually, with the volume of information there is, like you said, being able to distill it and actually find out what you're looking for and what isn't fake news is a skill in itself, I suppose, rather than just...
I mean, I rely on Donald Trump to tell me what's fake news. I mean, it's very, very great guy.
He's good at it, though, yeah.
He's awesome.
Okay, let's get back to the book. So we do talk about learning a lot in the book, and I think it's interesting about our backgrounds in terms of how we got on at school and things like that. The other thing that we talk about in the book is a growth versus a fixed mindset, and I think it was Dr. Carol Dweck that sort of came up with this theory that if people believe they can, people believe they have the ability to become smarter and get better at things, and that's a growth mindset, then they can, and if they can't, then that's a closed mindset or a fixed mindset, and actually it means they can't because they've already shut off all hope of being able to improve.
Yeah, it's the old saying, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And it's very true. I mean, if you plant that seed within your mind to think, yes, I will be able to do this, or I have the ability to perhaps do this, then you've opened up the gates already to just crack on. Whereas if you say in your mind, there's no way I'm going to be able to pass that test, or there's no way I'm going to be able to do that, then fine.
And we talk about in the book about the kind of questions to ask yourself to start opening up the sort of the thinking patterns that you need. So how can I overcome this challenge? What am I going to do about this? Rather than just closing it off and saying I can't. It's actually the questions that you ask yourself and other people to inspire that. And actually, I heard something that was like, that's one job of a good leader, is actually just to ask those questions and just to challenge, but also to sort of inspire and say, well, actually, how can we get around that problem? That's an issue, but how can we get over that?
Yeah, a mark of a good leader or a mentor is not necessarily to give you the answers. It's to ask great questions like you just said. It's just probing in and making you challenge yourself and leading you down a path which you may consciously or unconsciously be aware of. But it's so much more powerful when you reveal it within yourself as opposed to it being put upon you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it has to be, you have to want it yourself, and you have to want to be open to it. I'm just trying to find, here we go. So in the book, we've got the advantages of growth mindset. I really wanted to call them out because I think that was really important. So in the book, we've got the advantages of a growth mindset are a desire to seek out feedback in order to improve. And I think we're going to talk about sort of learning from failure and things like that. Really important to seek out feedback. And actually, it's not always what you want to hear, right?
Yeah. Some of the best lessons are things when you've really cocked up. Yeah. Where maybe you think, actually, I did a good job here, and the feedback has been not as great as what you expected. But that's a great thing, isn't it? Yeah. That's a really powerful thing to be accountable. I think we're going to talk about that. Well, we have talked about it. And learning from failure is really, really important. You got a few more there?
I've got a few more. Just on that though, just remember that feedback is the breakfast of champions.
Oh, I like that. Brilliant.
So the other advantage of a growth mindset are a level of comfort with approaching new tasks or situations, because if you know that if there's going to be a challenge, you can overcome it, then you're not worried about going into new challenges. You know, actually, you're not going to be able to do anything, and that's all right. So you're actually comfortable with approaching those.
Yeah.
And similarly, resilience when faced with adversity or challenges. So not just approaching new tasks or situations, but actually when you're in them, and you come up with an issue and you've got that determination to carry on. And reduce stress and emotional impact of failure. So actually failure doesn't hit you as hard. It's not like a dagger to the heart, because actually you know that it's just part of the process. You're going to learn from it.
We explore that in a lot more detail in the book, managing your emotions and your mindset, don't we? I mean, you've got to manage the highs, but also manage the lows. Absolutely. And have a consistent emotional balance. Otherwise, it's going to hit you really hard when you fail at something, because you will. Yeah, it's inevitable.
And you want to, don't you? Right? You want to.
Well, we don't strive to fail,
but
it does happen. And you just got to be ready for that. But also equally, when you do really, really well, you don't want to be on cloud number 9 and stay there, and then the crash is even worse. You've got to have a level approach to life.
And also, you don't want say you're in a good market, if you're investing or if you're doing property or whatever it is you're doing, and it's a really easy market to operate in. You don't want your results. You think your results are as part of what you've done, but actually it's just because it's an easy market to operate in. You need that readjustment to say, well, actually, no, it's there's things that you can learn from this,
and having good feedback mechanisms in place, whether it's feedback from peers or your mentors or friends and family, or even people that you work with, your colleagues, your fellow directors, or whatever it is.
That's a really good point. It's almost like you intended to lead on to the next point, which is learning from everywhere. So the point of this is, you can't only learn from people that are older than you, people that are more experienced than you, people that are in the same industry as you, people that are the same sex as you, those kind of things. You can learn from anywhere and everywhere and all the time, and we go into that in the book as well.
Yeah, you've got to have a filter though, haven't you? I mean, I heard the other day from someone whose name escapes me right now, but he said, if you want to know what the future is going to look like, look at what teenagers are doing today, because effectively they are going to be what's driving tomorrow. Which worries me slightly with Snapchat and whatever else. But it's very true. You've got to be able to be open, be a sponge. You've got to have a filter to say, right, this is not quite useful, but I'm aware of it. I know that's coming in the future.
It's almost like putting a weighting on people's opinions. I think we've talked about this before, where if you've got someone that's in a certain industry, then maybe you do weight their opinion slightly more, but it doesn't mean you can't learn from anyone else. Or if you've got if you've got 4 people that are more experienced than you in a certain industry or whatever, telling you something, and you've got a couple of people that maybe aren't, or just your friends, you've got to think about the weighting of how you take that feedback on board.
And sometimes a friend who you may not necessarily have the greatest weighting for, because they're not in that industry, will just blindside you with an amazing comment. So always be open to feedback.
Because I think, that's true, because sometimes you can get people can be so into the detail and into the weeds of their industry and what they're doing and the way it's always been done, that you need someone from outside to... Actually, quite an interesting example, I can't remember if we put it in the book, I think we might have taken it out, but we did a business competition at university here, and it was me and another guy from the business school, and then it was 4 geographers, and we won it. And I honestly think we won it because we had some geographers, well, mostly geographers, it was the geography team, because they weren't just so into just like business stuff like that. They were creative, and they sort of understood the other side of the customer transaction and stuff like that, which I thought was quite interesting.
That's amazing. And it's so good, because that's just triggered a memory with what we did in uni. We had a maths competition. We had to work out the velocity of something on a moving target. Right. And there's loads of weird maths, which, it's way over my head. But what we brought to the table...
Star Trek.
There was a scenario where South Park the movie had just come out, and we thought, well, let's spice this up, because loads of people going for submarines firing torpedoes to a moving ship, the standard scenario. So what we did, we had Saddam Hussein.
Oh, God.
And we were like part of a special ops team at Stargate SG-1, and we had to fire a bullet at Saddam Hussein, and we had to factor in wind velocity and all this kind of stuff. So half my team were amazing applied mathematicians. The other half were me and Sam and James and Adana. We just drew out the scenario, made it really fun and funky, and we won. And that's the point. Joining 2 different mindsets can be very powerful.
100%. And you need to make it relevant to you, and that's maybe what part of the problem with school is, because they're trying to force it in a certain way. But if you can make it relevant, if you're trying to teach maths, teach it in a practical way that people will actually enjoy using. I did wonder where that story was going. I'm glad it only went that far. And then the final thing we were going to talk about was learning from failure and black box thinking.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, so we won't go in it, and we go into it in the book as well. But there's a book called Black Box Thinking, which is a really, really good book, and it's all about the learnings from the airline industry versus the medical profession. And I won't go into it because there's a whole book, and we talk about it in the book. But effectively, the airline industry is very good at learning from failure, not even failures as such, but near misses. So it doesn't have to be a crash to be classed as a failure. It can be a near miss where planes came a certain distance within it, away from each other, or something failed but it wasn't critical and no one died. And they're really good at learning from that, sharing the information with the other manufacturers and airlines and things like that. And as a result, the industry is constantly improving, and it's that constant sort of feedback loop, whereas the medical profession isn't so much like that. And again, it goes into it in the book, so we won't go into it.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very true. And we talk about the reasons in our book about why the medical industry isn't necessarily so keen to open up on problems, failures, that kind of thing, and learning because of liability and other issues. I saw Sully, the film about Captain Sully who had to do an emergency landing on the Hudson River. And he performed an amazing miracle because effectively no one had ever done that and survived. And the inquiry that was set up afterwards was literally there to just tear him apart, his decision making process. And in the end, he won it through because he proved that the computers, all the simulations were wrong. And you didn't take into account the human factor. But the point is that the airline industry takes its safety very, very seriously and is very open and public about it. Perhaps a little bit too rigorous. But it's a shame that the medical industry isn't as transparent.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think actually there was one other thing we were going to cover off, which was talking just about paid learning and the difference of... Hello, you're right. So the difference between paid learning, so we've got education, mentorship, accountability and things like that. So not just about learning sort of as you go and as you're doing it, but also paying other people and going on mentorship programs and joining accountability groups and things like that.
There's a lot of resistance to that with old school kind of people who've done it, and they think, well, why would you pay someone to teach you these things? And sometimes it can be very expensive. But I would always argue that they have done it, they have achieved or they've done it in their lives, whether it's really great success with building up a business or whatever it may be. You're paying for effectively be fast-tracked by that experience. You're paying for those decades worth of experience to be focused in on your 100%. Specific, bespoke journey. And I think that's invaluable.
And it's like we said before, you choose people based on their experience, where they're from, and give them a weighting, like we were talking about. And you would choose the people that have either done what you want to do or done something similar, and like you say, learn from their experience and pay for that education.
Absolutely. So we want to know your thoughts on learning and education and different learning styles and times in your life, especially as you get older and in your success journey. So pop your comments in on the live video, email us on hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com, or get in touch on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
So thank you for listening this morning to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe, leave us a review, and we look forward to your comments on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I don't know if we've mentioned the book yet, but don't forget to subscribe to our book launch at tiny.cc/yourbook.
Is that the book called Your Success, which has been released on Amazon on the 24th of September?
That's it.
That's incredible.
The very same.
I can't wait. So I've been Angelos.
And I've been Mo.
And see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.